in my view, a responsible alternative and reflects tremendous bipartisan, in fact unanimous work by the Appropriations Committee that avoids a property tax hike and puts us on a path to funding education at 55% and does many other praiseworthy things. But I won't dwell on or repeat the speech I gave earlier. I rise simply to spell out in a somewhat clearer way through the headlines of 1991 the chaos referred to by the representative of Wells, with which we flirt if we fail to override the budget veto today. 1991. Bangor Daily News. State employees berate governor, legislators. Excerpt. During the day, Democrats and Republicans took turns blaming each other for a breakdown in negotiations. All day long and into the evening, car and truck horns blared out the frustrations of the state employees, and a tent city of protesters grew in Capitol Park, chanting, clapping state workers, jeered lawmakers arriving for their afternoon session. About 10,000 non-emergency state employees who had been shut out of work 4 days last week, again, were idled. And it goes on. On Wall Street, the rating agencies were getting anxious. State Treasurer Sam Shapiro, who met Thursday with top executives of Moody's Investor Service, said he was informed that the stalemate was, quote, testing the limits of Moody's confidence in the state. Standard & Poor's had already, at that time, dropped the state's AAA rating by half a notch. Another headline, Mr. Speaker, from the Ellsworth American. Budget impasse cripples state. An excerpt. Until Tuesday afternoon, district attorneys throughout the state were not being paid, nor were they considered essential, effectively closing the courts. For those area motorists whose car registration and driver's license expired on June 30th, the shutdown of the motor vehicle registry could not have come at a worse time. They now face the prospect of leaving their cars behind or driving without proper documentation and facing possible summons to court when it reopens. I'm sure there are a number of people who woke up yesterday and realized they now had expired licenses and registrations, said Sheriff Bill Clark on Tuesday. Meanwhile, on Swans Island, down east as well, Louise Martin remained at her post at the ferry service terminal despite the fact that there is no money to pay her for her work. These were some of the choices that people had to make. A third headline, Mr. Speaker. State shutdown enters third day, from the Press Herald. In Biddeford, courts turned away people who showed up for hearings or to pay fines. One of those told to come back another day was a Virginia man who paid $500 to fly to Maine for a mediation session in district court. The clerk is quoted as saying he was extremely angry and frustrated. It was one of those things. Who do you get mad at? I think we all know the answer to that, Mr. Speaker. In Buxton, Thelma Shepard, 80 years old, traveled 1.5 hours from her home to the Maine Veterans Memorial Cemetery in Augusta to place flowers at her husband's grave, only to find the gate locked on Tuesday. I couldn't believe it, said Shepard. I was terribly disappointed I couldn't get in there. Another headline, Mr. Speaker, from the Ellsworth American. Children were lost in shuffle. An excerpt. Caseworkers for abused and neglected children began processing hundreds of new referrals last week as the Maine Foster Parents Association called for a moratorium on new foster home placements in the wake of state shutdowns. This is a real tragedy, Mr. Speaker, and I encourage people to read more about it. Kennebec Journal. Shutdown could have hurt car dealers and banks. The extended shutdown of Maine state government pinched banks, lawyers, insurance companies, and car dealers, which do business regularly with the Secretary of State. And the article continues. Another headline from the Journal Tribune. State role considered in death of Massachusetts man. From Popham Beach, AP. The Director of Parks and Recreation said he would not speculate whether the death of a 65-year-old Massachusetts man could have been averted if a state park had been fully staffed. Kennebec Journal. Workers protest rampant. Scores of idled state employees stormed the offices of Republican Governor John McKernan and his budget-blocking legislative allies Monday, while questions over issuing welfare and unemployment checks highlighted the disruption and confusion of Monday's government shutdown. Journal Tribune, the longer it lasts, the worse it gets. It could be the vacation from hell for many tourists to Maine if state government doesn't get back in business soon. Road-killed animals will lie on roads longer. Backed-up toilets at state parks won't get fixed. Bars may run out of liquor with no place to reorder. Just a handful more. And this is only a taste, Mr. Speaker. Kennebec Journal, work piles up at state offices. Quote, it's a crime what they're doing to those people, to the public, unquote. Augusta, a backlog of work is growing for closed state agencies, affecting developers waiting for construction permits, child abuse investigations, even people seeking deer hunting licenses. Headline number 10 from the Bangor Daily News, quote, it's a nuclear meltdown in Augusta, unquote. Headline number 11 from the Kennebec Journal, forget politics, shutdown is real for state workers. And this excerpt, Debbie Morton of Manchester said in a late paycheck could delay paying the light bill again. If we don't get no check by next week, it won't get paid. We need groceries, said Morton, an employee at the Workers' Comp Commission. She and her husband, an injured carpenter, were in the State House with their 3 young children, also trying to get the attention of lawmakers. It's getting so that even the car payment is getting behind, she said. Other women said all this may force them to go on welfare. Essentially, I want the governor to know, and anyone else in the legislature, I'm a mother of 2, and I have to support my children, a woman said, as her 2- and 5-year-olds spun around her. I can't support anybody unless I get paid. From the Press Herald, rest stop squalor underscores crisis in nearby Augusta. A rest stop on Interstate 95 north of Augusta became a not-so-tidy symbol of the state shutdown over the weekend, greeting motorists with overflowing toilets and heaps of trash blowing through the parking lot. And I'll close with this one from the Press Herald. Taverns facing 5th-less 4th. Managers of some taverns said Tuesday that the shutdown of state government could leave them without liquor to sell during the long 4th of July weekend, one of the busiest of the summer. And obviously, this particular concern is not likely to take shape in the same way, but it certainly could impact paying our hospitals if we fail to pass a budget here today. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge this body to accept a responsible alternative, to accept that 2/3 of a loaf of revenue sharing is better than none, to accept the compromise, responsible work by our unanimous Appropriations Committee. I think there's certainly things that we can agree on and disagree on here today about this budget. But at the end of the day, I want to thank the Appropriations Committee for really defying what many said in making predictions about this legislature. They really have done what many said was impossible. So I want to thank all the members of the committee, and I want to especially thank the representative from Wells and the representative from Newport for their work across the aisle with us, with the representative from Lewiston. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your leadership, and I hope here today that we can pass a budget and not spend the next days or weeks of our lives and the lives of the people of Maine and the visitors to the people of Maine in the ways just described. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.